Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in this global village. I want to extend a very special welcome to you here on today's Africa at Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio. Uh, today's Africa is a very special program where we celebrate the heartbeat of a rising continent. I am your host, Dr. FM, Dr. Francis Munangi Mpindu, and this is a space where Africa's stories, our innovations, our cultures, and our voices come alive. From groundbreaking news and ideas to inspiring people shaping our future, we bring you conversations to inform, to uplift, and to empower. Indeed, Africa is on the move. And today we're delighted that we have a special guest who is joining us from across the Atlantic, from where I am. And we are delighted to have Mr. T.L. Huchu. And I am going to allow him to let us know who he is to some degree. He's a very special, gifted guy. He is an author, he's a writer, he's a novelist, and he does a few other things as well. So we are going to get to understand some of the things that have led to where he is now in terms of his journey, his focus, and some of the things that he has accomplished. So we're talking about the power and value of languages, including African languages. We know that a lot is happening in Africa. In fact, in some of the places where we are aware, some of the schools, they tell our children, do not speak anything else other than English. So what's happening to our African languages? And so Mr. T.L. Huchu here is here to help us to bring some concepts, some perspectives, and some insights, and help us to understand what's going on in today's Africa. So this is what we have. So Mr. T.L. Huchu, thank you and welcome, sir. Thank you for making time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on the station, Dr. Mpindu. You know, today is Valentine's Day,
Yes, it
and
is.
there is nothing more romantic that you can give to your significant other than a poem or well wrote words done in Shona language. It hits the heart much harder than any English language composition you could ever come up with. And so I'm delighted we get to talk about language. I know in your introduction you wanted me to say something about myself.
Yes, sir.
My main interest in language is this is my bread and butter. I am a novelist and short story writer from Zimbabwe. I was born in a small mining town called Bindura, which is about 80 kilometers north of the capital, Harare. And I always had a love of literature. Going through school, I was fortunate to have a good school library and a great local library in my hometown. And at some point, I decided this is what I want to do. I want to tell stories because for human beings, everything is story. Who we are, our religions, our politics, our ideology is all navigated and arranged through the stories that we tell ourselves. And it's such a powerful thing. And this is why historically there's been a movement to alienate certain people from telling stories. And I think that's really important. So my first novel, which came out in 2010, was called The Hairdresser of Harare. This was literary fiction. And I had a second novel, The Maestro, the Magistrate, and the Mathematician. But I wanted to really expand the range of what I did because I had been working in short fiction and in the literal form and science fiction and fantasy and in crime. So I did the Edinburgh Night series after that, which is my most successful work to date. The first novel is The Library of the Dead. So words are very important to me.
You know what? Just listening to you, Mr. Huchu, I am excited and looking forward to some of the perspectives that you're going to bring to us today. I'm saying this because in my introduction, I mentioned that, from groundbreaking ideas to inspiring people who are shaping our future. and writers, novelists, authors like yourself, you have such a key role in society because language is not just communication tool, but it is a powerful tool that shapes society. It is a powerful tool that shapes politics, romantic life, like you have already intimated. It's powerful, and oftentimes people like ourselves on the other side of philosophy and ethics, we miss out on the combination or the integration that comes from people like yourself who are like, listen, be careful about what you say and how you say it, you know, because words matter. Now, interestingly, I read somewhere that growing up, you were pretty much an English guy. So where did this local focus and focus on your Africanness come in? Because having learned and started speaking English at a very, very early age, and I discovered that you went to very good schools, very good environment. So everything was English, but here's this African guy who is in Scotland who is very African in his thinking. So what happened?
I am a product of my history, as we all are. Zimbabwe is a former British colony. We were colonized in 1890 until 1980 after the War of Liberation. And one of the most important things the colonizer will do is to strip you of your language. If you think about uh, your culture as a vessel that embodies your worldview, the genius of your people, their history, and everything, the ultimate tool for that is language. Language is the most beautiful thing that human beings can produce. Our thoughts are in language. As Derrida said, there is no outside language. We are creatures of language. So part of this process meant that because we had new rulers, they brought their language and imposed it on us. So that's how you become a subject. In the work that I'm working on now, there's a lot of verbal sparring. Language isn't just a tool, it is a weapon. It is the ultimate weapon, more powerful than any of the nuclear bombs that we have in this world, because to do physical damage or physical harm, that will pass. But to damage someone's mind, and we do this through language, the effects live long after they go through generations and generations. So in Zimbabwe, there is a culture that was imposed on us that we inherited and we've carried it and we've run, in which there is a premium on the English language. That proximity to whiteness denotes power because think about it, you have been subjugated, your kings have been demoted to chiefs without any real legal standing. Your laws, your customs have been brought down a peg because there is now a constitution. You have a new monarch. You are subjects of the queen who you've never seen, who is um, an ocean away, pretty much. So, one of the ways you could come up in this particular environment was to master the language of the colonizer, which is the new language of power. So if you were a young man growing up in rural Zimbabwe, as my father and mother were, or my mother wasn't a young man, a young woman, you went to school, missionary schools, you were taught the Bible. So you left aside your traditional religion. You became a member of the church. I grew up in a conservative Catholic family in which traditional beliefs were frowned upon. So my parents wanted the best for me, and they sent me to these. I was born in 1982 after independence. To these former all-white schools because there was two-tiered education. You had the Group A schools where the white kids, the white Rhodesian kids went to, and you had the Group B schools somewhere below where the Africans went to. And it was the Group A schools that were better funded by the government, good books, low student teacher ratio, and all the things that you need in order to get a good education. So right from nursery school, I was sent to Bindra Nursery School. You know, these hierarchies were there in which the teachers were white and the assistants or orderlies were black, and we spoke English all the way through primary school. If you were walking through Bindra School, and now most of our teachers were black, but if you spoke in Shona or any other indigenous language, you were caned. It was beaten into you for your own good. So they wanted to shape your accent, your enunciation, your pronunciation, so you speak right. So you go through this process for 7 years of primary school, another 6 years of high school into A level, and the result that comes out is all your logical functions have been taken over by this parasite that has been um, injected into you over this period of time. You now think in English, you function in English. When you try to reason in Shona, it is very, very difficult. As a result, I read much faster in English than I do in Shona. And this is deliberate because we would get a period a week for Shona. So when we think about the status of the language itself, it was taught, but it wasn't a big deal whether you passed or not. So the grade 7 level, when you finish your primary school, you would be given points when you took the final examination. So there were 4 subjects: English, mathematics, content, which is kind of like general science, and Shona. Now, you got a point each if you scored over 90%, which is the highest. So if you had 4 points, the least amount of points, you did great. But when it came to applying for secondary schools, they really looked at these 3 subjects that were taught in English. So you could completely flunk Shona and it would have no outcome on your placing or your ability to go to a good institution. So that's sort of my story of how I got embedded in this language. And this isn't to say anything negative about my parents or the society. They want the best for you, and at that time, the best thing that you could do was to go and work for a white-owned corporation. So to this day, if I go back to Zimbabwe and I employ a Zimbabwean, more often than not, they'll call me Murungu wangu, which is my white man. That has become the word for boss. And I would refer to him as Muboyi wangu, which is my boy, which is the derogatory term that they used for grown African men. You're a boy, because, of course, Africans are children. So you see, this is such a strong part of our culture. I remember when we got independence in 1980, and the ruling party kept things going until about 2008, when they were forced to share power with the opposition, MDC under Morgan Changirai. In that settlement, the Minister of Education was David Coulthard, who is white Zimbabwean. So David Coulthard comes out and he does a lot of good in the education sector, increasing the availability of textbooks to schools. And he's thinking radically and innovatively. And he says, hang on a minute, we need to make sure our kids have a grounding in their local languages, and then we can layer English on top at a later stage. We really need to rethink the curriculum so that it fits our current context. And there are other countries that do that. I mean, if you look at globally, the most successful countries tend to work in their own languages, and then if they need to do business in another language, they'll use translators, etc. So this was a radical idea. As soon as he proposed it, the backlash was immediate, not from white Zimbabweans, from black Zimbabweans. How dare you? We want our children to learn English. This is the international language. And he just had to back down from the idea and didn't take it any further, because this is not what the parents who are sending their kids to schools in Zimbabwe want. In fact, perversely, when you notice the parents who are really, really affluent, who can afford to send their kids to private schools, when their kids come out of that, and they are denaturalized and they can barely speak Shona, the parents are really proud of it, and they'll tell you, "Mwana wangu anongotara chirungu," my child can only speak English, and it is a marker that their child has achieved a level of whiteness that they could not. It is completely and utterly ridiculous.
You know, Mr. TL, who you just listening to you, I'm getting very excited, and I think you're starting to annoy me in a very good way. And I like the thought-provoking perspectives that you're bringing to our attention today. Um, I am really, really delighted. I mean, you have your content, and I'm just looking and saying to myself, we really don't have enough time to be able to dig even deeper to some of the things that you have mentioned, and that's great because listen, we will bring you back. That's not a threat; it's a
I
promise.
would love that.
We want to make sure that you come back so that we build on this. It's interesting you make reference to David Coulthard, who is now the mayor of Bulawayo. 3 weeks ago, we actually had him in the studio,
That's
and
brilliant.
what a guy, what a guy. So for me to hear you say that he is someone who is saying, listen, we need to prioritize our African languages. Yes, English is important, but we need to make sure that our young people are proud of who they are. And oh my goodness, I'm getting excited and getting chicken skin right now hearing this from a young man like you, because this is the thinking that we want. We want Africa. We want Africans to be proud of who they are, their identity, their languages, their culture. But you are right. You're touching on this aspect of, for lack of a better word, decolonization. We need to think differently. We need to to look at life from a different perspective and say, listen, we've been made to think this way. This was imposed on us. Who we are doesn't necessarily jive with this. And I think this is where someone like yourself, you know, a writer, an author, a novelist, is shaping culture through the print and through conversations. So this is really really exciting. Again, would like to welcome our viewers and our listeners on today's Africa. This is your host, Dr. FM here. This is a trusted platform for insights, for progress, for positive African narratives. We explore the trends, the talents, the transformations that are shaping our continent locally and globally. So we're delighted that we have a very special brother here, a special guest, our brother, Mr. TL, who is someone who is saying, let's be careful about language, let's be careful about words. And so you mentioned some of the books that you have written. What inspired those books?
What inspired those books? So I'll come back to that a bit, but there's something very important that you said, which speaks to our lack of imagination. The fact that we are unable to conceive of a different world. Now, if you're a culture, and we are more than just a culture, we're a civilization that has endured for over 1,500 years. And this is of interest to me because of the project that I am working on now. If you cannot conceive of the world and shape it, other people will do that for you. And that comes from your own culture, developing a worldview. If you think about how the world sees us, I'm sorry to say, they don't have a reason to respect us. They don't have a reason to respect us at all, because you can only respect someone who has a firm grounding in their culture, in their faith, in what their people have done. Because again, Ubuntu, I'm a person because you're a person. So if I come here trying to claim that I'm a product of British culture, it is ridiculous because my people did not build that. They were subject to that, but they did not build that. We neglect our own long history because we desperately want to be part of this. And one of the good things about the diaspora experience and even some of the racist attitudes, despite the schools that I went to, I was reminded that you are not one of us. Now, this might be a good or bad thing in a multicultural age, but there is a certain truth embedded in that prejudice that if you come to people and you say, this is who I am, this is what we've built, I think they will respect you far more than you coming in and trying to imitate them. If there's anything, I'll give a music analogy. Pick whoever your favorite musician is and what they have done. If someone comes in and tries to imitate them and their style, you will not listen to that because you can always come back to the original source. So you have to bring in your own originality. But coming to the subject of my work, so I moved to the UK in 2002. And I'm a young man, I'm 19, I turned 20 while I'm here. And I'm beginning to discover the world. And I fall in love with Russian literature. I walked into Waterstones in a town in Berkshire called Reading, which is spelled reading, oddly. And I was going through some kind of existential crisis. You know, I was living alone for the first time. I was navigating life through by myself and trying to get a sense of who I was. So I had all these existential questions. You're a philosopher. What is the meaning of life? Do I exist? Does God exist? And all that stuff that's been done to death. But these questions were new to me because I had been removed from my community. Before, I had no reason to question these things. So I got into reading popular psychology and popular philosophy. And within these works, where I was searching for answers, I discovered that there would always be these allusions and references to 19th century Russian novelists, particularly Dostoevsky. If you think about, you know, how he pretty much starts using psychological elements in his novels before psychology becomes a discipline. If you think about existentialism, you're thinking of Dostoevsky and maybe even the French Sartre and Camus, those kinds of people. So through fiction, I found a mirror reflecting my experiences and the world back to me. I've often said to people, Dostoevsky is the great Zimbabwean novelist because the world that he brings forth, in fact, the Russians, the 19th century Russians, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, are really talking about Zimbabwe because in Dostoevsky's fiction, there is always the question of the role of the West in Russia. Should Russia remain its own orthodox kind of civilization or move to the West? Those kind of frictions, these are things that we are navigating in 21st century Zimbabwe. If you think of Tolstoy's work, Resurrection, in which an aristocrat is beginning to realize the unfairness of land tenure in Russia, and eventually he gives up his estate so that the serfs can have it and run it. This is the land question that we had in Zimbabwe. There are other sort of more crass parallels, like in Dostoevsky's book, people are always dying of consumption tuberculosis. You know, I grew up at the height of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, in which tuberculosis was a disease that we knew, and people were wasting away. The poverty and grittiness that you find within the Russian novel reflected late 20th century to early 21st century Zimbabwe. So the work spoke to me so viscerally and so truly. I decided this is what I want to do. I want to be a writer. And I did what young artists do. I imitated the artists, the writers that I loved. So my first attempt to write a novel was something called Notes from a Dying People. This is an allusion to Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground. it was a really badly done work of book that was really imitative. There were some interesting ideas in it, but I hadn't found my own voice. And I would write another four manuscripts that were rejected until I wrote my first novel, The Hairdresser of Harare. And The Hairdresser of Harare is the story of Wimbai, a young single mom who's trying to make a life for herself and her daughter in the hyperinflation sort of period that we had between 2000 and 2009. And she falls in love with a guy that turns out to be gay and is using her as a beard. And so this book was it functions, it uses the salon as a microcosm of society, because you have working class people. This is your hairdressers servicing the rich and the affluent. So you could have different kinds of people walking into the salon, and that created sort of like a dynamic microcosm of Zimbabwe as a whole. So that was my foray into fiction. It took a while for me to get my own voice, and the book came out in 2010, published by the Zimbabwean press, Weaver Press, run by Irene Staunton and Maury McCartney, and things pretty much took off after that.
Wow. So it sounds like I mean, because of who you are by nature, you're very down to earth, and you talked a little bit, well, to some degree, about the journey that you went through after you relocated, after you moved to England or to the United Kingdom, and the process that you went through. And I'm saying to myself, um, there is tremendous value in people hearing that type of a narrative, because oftentimes we don't dwell on the challenges. We talk about uh, the joys, and yet it's through those challenges that we become who we should really become. Because oftentimes when you're thrown into a good area, it's sort of a continuation of a previous life, if it was a good one. But if you end up in a challenging environment, then you're going to learn new skills. You're going to learn to survive. So you have to think differently. You have to behave differently. You have to wrestle with who you are. And you did that not so much from philosophy, but from um, I guess, reality, and just say, this is who I am. Now, where do I go from here? And from what we are picking up, I mean, you have come a long way, and you have developed into this type of a resource now people can tap into. But people like myself, we do not fully understand, and we don't have a whole lot of appreciation for the process you went through that led to who you are. And that's great, because we may never have the opportunity to really get into that. But thank you for your honesty, and just opening up, and sharing about that. Um,
There is
Now,
definitely something that you said there, that really struck me, which is resource. Now, if I look back to all the political speeches I've had from our leaders, and I've listened to an unhealthy amount of political speeches, they will talk about having gold, land, and all these things. But not once have I heard anyone speak about the people of Zimbabwe, or I don't even recall any other African politician talking about people as the resource, right? That is the most important thing. And once you start thinking like that, your entire political ideology has to shift, because now you have to preserve this resource. The fact that I'm here, I went to Churchill High School. I was in a hostel called Spencer. There were 19 of us doing A levels. In the year that I left, 16 of us left the country. And the state was comfortable with that. Say what you will about Kim in North Korea, you don't get, he doesn't allow his people to live, which is horrific. But it must mean, in a certain sense, he sees the value of having them within the state. But for us, it was like, okay, off you go. Who cares? Go do some menial work out there. So you have an education system that produces people that um, pretty much geared to serve a fallen empire that no longer exists. So it's almost natural that I wound up back in quote unquote the center. But if we saw our people as a very important resource to the state, we would treat them differently, we would empower them differently, because this is the reason why a country like Japan can spring ahead despite it not even being able to rival us in resources, or Singapore. But wealth comes from people. Everything comes from people. But our leaders fail to see that time. They're completely blind to it.
Wow, this is very inspirational. You're listening to Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio with your host here, Dr. FM, and we are here in the studio with a special guest of Brother Mr. TL Huchu, who is a writer and author and a novelist. And the journey that he has been sharing with us is just very, very enriching. And if you haven't already done so, our viewers and our listeners, please download our app from the Apple Store or Google Play. And you can also visit our website on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. You can also tap the donate button to make a contribution that helps us to continue to serve in the community. Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio executive team is very, very down to earth. We are not here to make money. In fact, we encourage people to serve, and our guests and everybody coming in, we are here to make a difference. Not just in Africa, but globally. And of course, the diaspora is one of them. And we have a brother here showcasing that, the people in the diaspora. But please do donate, because we do focus on scholarships for young people. And, the young people are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they are also the leaders of today. So we need to start today to do some of these things. So for inquiries, please feel free to contact us. You can contact us. They are on WhatsApp, 437-778-3299. Again, the number for Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio is 437-778-3299. And they are in Toronto, in Canada. So drop us a note. So again, just listening to some of the things you're sharing with us, I am saying to myself, how does a young man like you speak emphatically, effectively, passionately to our young people who are thinking that, listen, I don't have to worry about Ashanti language, Yoruba, Swahili, or Kiswahili, Zulu and Shona and Debele, my Luo and Luya and Amharic and Sesotho and Xhosa. I just need to focus on English.
What I'll say to that young kid very bluntly is, you are a fool. Now, if you do happen to read, I would advise you read Barack Obama's Dreams from My Father, his memoir. What I got through that book wasn't just his political philosophy. The deepest, most meaningful part is this search and quest for identity, for that which he had lost. Which is why he went to Kenya to meet some of his relatives, but he'd already been stripped of the language. Now, if you have this opportunity to learn your culture, to learn your language, I want you to really look around the world, because the reason I say you're a fool is because have you looked at the Japanese, the Chinese, the Saudi Arabians, the Egyptians, all these cultures, the Germans, the French, they define themselves by their culture. You can meet a Chinese person, and if they've learnt English, they'll talk to you in English. It doesn't make them a lesser human being. This thing that you are looking for in sort of like adopting an alien culture as your own, you're chasing a mirage. It's never going to happen. I've been down that road, which is why I speak so forcefully about it, talking with a fake accent, trying to pretend I am someone else who I'm not. And the world will catch you out to be the fraud that you are. You're a grifter, nothing more. But if you come into the world with a deep, thorough embedding in your culture, everyone you meet, even if they are hostile, even if they do not like you, they will be forced to respect you. Now, there's this fantastic study that was cited by Akala. He's a British rapper, brother to Miss Dynamite, who was also another great British rapper. And Akala cites a study that happened in London. Obviously, London is very multicultural. And he would ask young black boys in London what they thought of being a black man. And the responses that he would have are very stereotypical, the usual nonsense that you see spouted in Western media, which is violence, crime, drugs, etc. You ask the same set of kids, most of whom are West African migrants, what it means to be a Yoruba, an Igbo, an Ashanti man. They talk about respect. They talk about prioritizing education. They talk about the need to have a good career and to excel in life. So you understand these things are embedded in your culture. And if you are going to get rid of that, there's a Shona term, Mombeye Mashanga, a calf of the chaff. That is what you will be. And I feel sorry for you on this journey in life, but you have neglected and denied yourself the richest part of that which you are. If you notice with our brothers from the diaspora, the Ghana had this wonderful scheme of, they did the year of return, of trying to bring some of our brothers in the diaspora back into the culture. There is that yearning to find out your origins. And if you deny yourself that, you will deny your kids that. Your entire lineage is doomed because of that stupid mentality that you are holding. Because what you have is more valuable than anything else in the world.
I'm really delighted you're calling it for what it is. You use the word foolish and you use the word stupid. Oftentimes, when we are young, we think we know everything. But you are speaking from a young man who had a good life. Sometimes people think that because we're born in Africa, we ran away from poverty, but that wasn't your case. Am I right to say that?
That is correct. I had a
Yeah.
good
So
middle
so
class upbringing.
exactly. So you were not running away from poverty, but you were looking for opportunities. So oftentimes, hearing from young men like yourself who grew up in a very not probably not a perfect environment, but a perfectly good environment where you learned to dialogue with others and to dialogue with yourself and bring yourself to this place of being proud of your identity. And this is remarkable. So I'm saying to myself, I'm in this stage of my life to know that we have young men like yourself, TL, who are passionate about being African, and you don't shy away from that. You are uh, not chasing the mirage, as you said, but you have your feet planted on solid ground. Um, this is encouraging. And so how do we start helping our young people? I know you labeled them well and you defined them well, and I agree with you 100%. That's foolishness, that's stupidity, to think that being an African I can be European, because I won't. I will never be. But how do we start helping our young people, our young girls, our young men think along these lines like yourself? In other words, how do we reproduce and cone TL to make sure that we have more of TLs around us?
So there is this culture is your foundation. After that, you can learn anything else. If you have a strong foundation, you can build a skyscraper right up to the clouds. You can play around with any culture that you want, any language that you want, you'll be fine. But it has to be off the base of a strong foundation. If you have a weak foundation, you cannot build up. Everything that you try will crumble. So it by own life, and we're already doing part of this process by openly discussing some of these things, which would usually only discuss together, having a pint, in the pub somewhere. But I think one of the most important things any human being can aspire to be is to become an example, to lead by example. This is the most important thing, because young people take cues from us. What we value, they learn to value. Because I'm not a parent myself. I don't intend to have kids. That is not my calling. My vocation is in literature. But I think parents have a huge role in imparting these things, because if you have something that is given to you as a child, it is up to you, when you come of age and you're the age of majority, to discard the bits of those teachings that you don't want, and to keep the ones that you want. This is the right of any sort of sovereign human being. But the duty is on the parent to still impart those things. So we really have to start at the granular level as parents. Within my own work as an artist, I embed these things within the text. One of the reasons that I've become so successful, despite these earlier leanings that I have, is because there was a culture around me that I absorbed. And when you see Shona elements of Shona spirituality within my work, paradoxically, this is what makes me successful, because I can then create something that no one else can. It's that example of, if I want to listen to rap music, there are all these American rappers that are amazing at what they do. Why would I want to listen to a Zimbabwean rapper with a fake accent trying to be American? I can go right to the source. But if rap is your form and you enjoy it because it is an art form, you can do something different with it. You can add your own flavor to it. That's why artists like Holy 10 and Volts G have become so successful in our culture, because they've taken something and reshaped it. They've taken the vessel, reshaped it, poured ourselves into it. So when we consume it, we enjoy it. This is the same thing that happened to Afrobeats. The reason it is global, and I don't speak pidgin, but I love Afrobeats, is because they've taken elements of hip hop and jazz and fused it into something that brings out their identity, and the whole world loves it. The world doesn't want to see, you know, a Nigerian rapper imitating American rappers. The same with, if you have artistic impulses, with Amapiano in South Africa. This is their thing that they did in their language, and other people listen to it. So you really have to have this grand view of if you want to succeed in life and you're coming from a culture, what you can then do is remix elements of those cultures and create something new. So we definitely need to have more of this, where we show people that are succeeding on the basis of their culture. And I can talk about No Violet Blawayo, amazing Booker shortlisted novelist. No, Violet still writes in English, but she infuses the language with Ndebele sensibility. So when you listen to it, it's like you're listening to Ndebele being spoken in English. In a way, she has no one would have that have ever thought. Brian Chikwawa, his new novel, Shamiso, does something similar, rearranging the English language. But these novelists win awards and they're successful. They could not do that for Bulawayo without a basis in Ndebele culture, for Chikwawa without a basis in sort of the Shona language. So this is particularly important. And this is why I say that for young people, you will not get anywhere on this track. Show me an example of someone who's been an imitator and gone out and done great things in the world. So by providing this platform, Dr. Mbindu, what you're doing is bringing people on to say, look, young people, there are these examples, but the vast majority of the work has to be done at the lowest level, which is in the family. Where we need to really do work on as well is at the level of the state. And if the state is responsible, we've spoken about Coulthard's failure to reshape the curriculum in our own image. And I think that was the first step, but this is something that we definitely have to respond to, because as human beings, we're motivated by incentives. If something is important, you'll do it. This is why that person that says, I don't want to speak my indigenous language, will go to Germany and learn German and speak German. So if you were to say, look,
Ironically, isn't it?
it is so ironic, and the fact that they don't even realize it is just it kind of just shows you how that mental slavery that Bob Marley spoke about is so powerful and true. But if we give incentives, so it could just be change the road signs. Now you have to learn the language to read the road signs. People will do
That
that
is
because you
that
are
is that is
signaling that this is
powerful.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is
And
powerful.
and and one of the reasons for the paralysis of modern African states when it comes to making this change, I'll cite an example: Rwanda. Rwanda, they were fed up for all the work Kagame might have done. They were fed up with the French, and they decided, no, we're not doing French anymore. We need a new national language. At which point we go, okay, so is it going to be Kenya Rwanda? You've got a bit of Swahili going on there. You've got Hutu. You've got Tutsi. Which way are you going to spin it? Oh, English. English is going to be our national language. And that is such a missed opportunity right there. Now, I can understand part of this mentality because our borders were constructed in the colonial era.
Right.
So there is that fear that, again, was embedded in us by the colonizers to say, oh, when we came, we actually pacified things because you were these warring savages that we brought order to. And without us, without this thing that we've constructed, you fall apart, which is completely false. And again, I keep alluding to this novel that I'm working on, but if you hear about these old empires, there was a lot of exchange and trade. Yes, wars happen, but I mean, if you want to talk about a continent that does war insistently, look at Europe. They have wars all the time. This is all they do. This is sort of like their main export to the rest of the world. It's constant warfare. So that thing that we fear is not true. And again, these are the shackles in our mind. Because when you create a situation in which local languages are important, there are very, very simple solutions to these things. So if I maybe go to Cholocho and I want to access a government service, I might not be able to speak Ndebele. But you can pick up a phone. Even here in the UK, if I go to the hospital and I can't speak English, they will find a Shona translator for me here in the UK. I've done translation work in the courts. I've done translation work for the courts. Sorry, not in the courts. That would be a lie. In documents, music, lyrics, and things like that. So if they can do it here, we can do it at home. that wouldn't cause any division. In fact, our languages would flourish if we did those things. But we need to be daring and really start rethinking what the world is, because one of the great things about the time that we live in, the world is in flux. We can see everything that's going on. This old
Mm,
center, these dead empires that we hold on to,
yeah.
their power, their prestige is slipping away fast. Again, this is why history is good. Europe itself, writing was used to be predominantly in Latin, in the language of the Roman Empire. This was the language of power and prestige until I think it was the 14th to the 16th century, where there was a movement towards local languages. And what was the result of that? There was this great flourishing in literature and philosophy, because finally the people were unshackled from this unwieldy language that had been imposed to them by a dead empire. But it took them how long? The Roman Empire. When can we say the end was? Let's just say 500 years before
Oh,
they
yeah.
got to that point. We don't have 500 years to mess about. This is work that
Right.
we can start doing now. And if we signal that at a state level, people would respond to this incentive.
You are right on. Remember earlier I said that I like what I'm hearing, and very thought provoking, and you're actually making me angry in a good way. I really like that. When people speak and they touch something within me that makes me want to look at things differently. I like that because this is about transformation, and like I said earlier, we really do not have all the time to dig into some of the things that you have done. And I'm just looking at the time and I'm like, oh my goodness, an hour is already gone. Listen,
Gone by.
who in the African continent, or the continent of Africa, were some of the writers who inspired you? Just name them for us.
The writers that inspired me, I mean, Chiuna Achebe is a towering figure with his work. I also look to the work of people like Tsitsi Dangaremgwa, who is a phenomenal writer. Nervous Conditions. That book is timeless. The Experimentalist, Dambudzo Marichera. But I also have an interest in contemporary writers. Sarah Ladipo Manyika, who's this Nigerian writer, I think, based in the States. Her book, Independence, really was a powerful influence on my own work. There's a wave of, and again, for young people and people of all ages, right now, the thing in African literature is science fiction and fantasy, envisioning ourselves in the future. There are great writers. Nedi Okorofa, oh my God. I mean, I would give a kidney to be able to do what Nedi Okorofa does. There is Wole Talabi, Chikodilie Melumadu. There is this wave of writers that are working in African science fiction and fantasy that are doing incredible things with the form. But
Just listening to you mentioning these great names, these giants in terms of uh, writing, fiction or real narratives and all that, it inspires me. Let me tell you why. Earlier, you mentioned the word Ubuntu. I am because we are. And I am seeing that we don't live on this island, me, myself, and I. We are intricately connected to other people, and we are influenced by others. And so I am so grateful that we have a young man like yourself who is making an impact in Africa. And I'm glad that you are not writing in Shona and Debele. Let me tell you why. Because the rest of Africa, they don't speak Shona and Debele, but we all, to some degree, to a larger degree, read English and understand English. And so you're writing uh, in these modes or models that really having a larger impact on everybody. And this gets me excited. Now I'm looking at the time. We are out of time, but tell me, What one or two things would you like to leave with us today as we have reflected on the power, the value of language, African languages? What would you like to leave with us today?
Ultimately, what we have been speaking about is the soul, your soul, who you are as a person, who we are as a people, as a state, and as a continent. And it will be defined by this most important of things. Nothing else matters more than language. Everything that we create in this world, our monuments, our literature, our TV shows, our technology itself, mathematics, mathematics starts in language. Everything that matters in this world begins in language. And if we are going to have a bright future different from the horrors that we've experienced in the past, and when I say these horrors in the past, I need us to remember that we are an ancient people. In historical terms, the 90 years that Zimbabwe was colonized is this, it's nothing, it's the blink of an eye, you know. So we have to move past that, tap into our own heritage, our own past. This is our foundation in which we build something new. And if we do that, then greatness awaits us.
Oh, this is powerful. Thank you so much for making reference to these four things, and I picked them up. You were very, very articulate. You know, looking at ourselves as a person and as people, as a state, and as a continent. I mean, you are a Pan Africanist young man, and I am delighted that even though you have the privilege of having been in the southern part of Africa, what you're doing really impacts everybody across. And this is so inspirational. And like I said, we will bring you back into the studio because we did not get into the books. I want next time for us to make time to have you identify the uniqueness of each book so that we can then now I would imagine that they are available on different platforms for people to purchase them as well. So it's really it's a delight. Um, our viewers and our listeners.
It's been a
I just feel like we should have gone further and further and further, but this brings us to the end of today's episode on today's Africa here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one online radio when it comes to African and Caribbean music. And we do have a variety of programs as well. And today's Africa goes live every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, we are a global network. We connect with people in over 100 different countries around the world. And so please share, visit our website, and share this with others as well. Like the programs so that other people get to know what is happening as well. So thank you for joining me today as we reflected on the power and the role of African languages, reflecting on ideas and voices that are shaping our continent. Remember, Africa's strength lies in its people, its innovations, and of course, its unstoppable spirit. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep believing in Africa. Yes, this is today's Africa, where the future is always in focus. So I want to remind you again, coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is the Caribbean Flavor with Mr. Marcus and Miss Gentle Blue. And so again, thank you for being with us today. Until next time, remember, today's Africa, where the future is always in focus.